the fact that I've got 5 oranges in front of me no matter what story I tell. Who cares? That doesn't make any difference. Do you not understand what I'm saying
That's
to
not
you?
a critique. That's a statement of just stuff.
Yeah, you see, the ideas
What does that
are
matter?
independent of the person authoring them.
We're asking, what is your critique of the tri-type theory? What do you find wrong? What is the wrongness you find with it logically? I think is what I'm asking.
Yeah, why is it wrong?
Why is it wrong?
You can only have one fear if you have 3 connections. You're going to have fear, image, inability to feel loved, and anger at the same time.
Yeah, one is more dominant. But that doesn't mean that you can't gain useful information from finding your fix in each center.
Okay, well, and also, of course, Blanky, is, remember, I'm talking about tri-type as a descriptive taxonomy that includes mechanisms that can be utilized to effectively understand our own cognition and the cognition of others better than in the absence of the tool. I don't necessarily buy into all that shit you're talking about there. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the tri-type as what I just described it as. So if you have a problem with what I'm saying, then address that. If you have a problem with Enneagram in general, then why would you critique my inconsistency with Enneagram in general as a means of attacking what I'm saying? Do you understand? Okay, well, if you can't respond on point, then there's no point in engaging with you. No, you weren't critiquing tri-type. That's exactly what you didn't do. That's exactly what you failed to do so far. You said there's only one fear, but I never said anything about that. We're talking about tri-type as a descriptive taxonomy of individual metacognition that is inclusive of some mechanistic arguments. Doesn't include the one you said, that these things are exclusive of one another. And it is, even if it includes the some are more dominant than others part, that's not inconsistent with anything I'm saying, nor even with the things you're saying that they're saying. So I just answered that. No, that's not the foundation of the theory. That's the foundation of Enneagram that you are describing. You're saying, I'm describing something. I don't like this. And I say, okay, well, I'm describing this thing here. And you say, I don't like this. You are that. And I say, no, I'm describing. Why don't you look at what I'm actually describing? Here's some things that I'm doing in front of me. Instead of looking at those other things over there to talk about the things that I'm doing, look at the things that I'm doing to talk about the things that I'm doing. Get it? I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm saying that, let's start at the beginning. Which part of this do you dispute? The tri-type taxonomy is a good way of descriptively separating an individual from the mass of humanity and saying you are not exactly the same as other people. You're distinct in somewhat predictable ways. The taxonomy includes some mechanistic arguments, but it's fundamentally not falsifiable, so it's not a model. Now, what is your critique of my tri-type analysis? What but what is your actual critique? So you haven't actually critiqued anything that I've said. You've critiqued things that I didn't say. You've done an excellent job of that. Then why are you critiquing it? The reason tri-type came up is because I was telling homie there that he's not a 9, he's a 1. And that if the taxonomy is to be maximally useful, we need to understand these Enneagram numbers to be representative of the following taxonomical elements, attributes, and mechanisms. And that's Mark. Well, Mark, you should identify yourself. I'd be more polite to you if I knew it was you.
No, that's not me.
Oh. I mean, what we were arguing about right now is whether homie there was a 1 or a 9, casual. My position is he's a 1. And I explained to you what my position on understanding what 1 through 9 is. Now, you want me to provide you all the mechanisms of a model, but I don't fundamentally use Enneagram in that fashion because to the extent that it gets more mechanistic, it runs afoul of a cognitive function model that is predominant and consistent with my very limited understanding of Enneagram. I want both taxonomies to fit together without contradiction. Thus, I have a limited scope of mechanistic arguments to make about Enneagram. I'm not so concerned about the means by which Enneagram numbers change over time. I don't buy into any of that shit. I think the tri-type is a good way of saying which of these aspects of life do you tend to prioritize over others. For me, it's the head aspect, for sure. Which of these aspects of life do you tend to prioritize? And when encountering these aspects of life, what is your default behavioral response, barring metacognition that invalidates that? It's a fairly limited claim to be making about Enneagram, but it is important that Enneagram be correct in its descriptors of 1 through 9, because I think the basic notion that we can divide taxonomy of human existence according to, on an emotional level, according to those 3 core areas, makes sense. It's a good way to taxonomy. It's a good way to distinguish some individuals from others. But for me, I require it to be consistent with my existing model of cognitive functions for it to be meaningful as a tool. I just explained it all. I explained to you why you're not going to get that level of specificity from me on Enneagram, because it needs to be a consistent taxonomy of emotions. If you want to argue with me, first of all, get the fuck on camera and mic so I can stop having to read and be so slow. If you're really right about shit, if you're good, if you're correct and sound in your critiques, then you get on here and give me some exercise, because right now I'm at an unfair advantage. You got to type and I can talk. And you're too, huh? First of all, my emotional state's irrelevant to what I'm saying. You're not responding on point. In fact, you're responding directly to something that's irrelevant, which means you're engaged in fallacious thinking. Second of all, I'm not getting angry. Please wait for me to get angry before making accusations. Jeez. Then the irrelevancy will have less obvious impact. See, right now, it's obviously irrelevant, but it's easier to convince people that it's irrelevant when you're not actually angry, so that it's both false and irrelevant. Wait for it to not be false, then make the accusation, and it's a little bit harder to convince people of the irrelevancy, because a lot of people don't think very well. It's irrelevant regardless. My argument's the same no matter how mad I am. Well, then you should be able to hear it more clearly. Again, you make claims that are oddly irrelevant, and then they seem to be critiques, and when I point that out, you say they aren't. For example, this sentence, quote, "You decided to make it a big deal," unquote. It's not relevant to what we're talking about. Whether or not it's true is a matter of interpretation, and it generally would be interpreted as a critique of me. And yet when I point that out, you say that validates the warrant of your critique, namely that I'm making things a big deal. But I'm not making a big deal out of anything. I'm having interesting discourse with you about your wrongness. And that's okay. Okay. Well, but hold on. You just brought up another point, and I gave you a good answer to it. Would you like to respond to my answer to the point you made?
What's this guy even arguing about?
He's basically saying that his critique of one theory is that it's inconsistent with another theory.
Right. And then he says, but I mean, he's right. Okay, let me be totally fair with homie here. He is correct when he's saying that I'm not giving him anything specific enough to really dig his teeth into. It's true, but for the reasons I indicated, because I have a very small set of claims to make about Enneagram, that the taxonomy is sensible, that it's a naturally occurring taxonomy of human emotional experience, that it's possible to interpret our behavior through those frames, and that if limited to tritypes, not wings, but tritypes, and understood through my understanding of how which slot it's in, 1, 2, or 3, that is entirely consistent with my overarching cognitive function model and can be utilized to provide additional information. So I am a ENTP 783 is different than an ENTP something else, provided we don't accept too many of the claims of Enneagram. So we cut short Enneagram's utility to the whole model right at the boundary of the tritype. We don't go into the dissolving or whatever they say, like, you're getting better, you move this direction, getting worse, you move that direction. Those are interesting things to talk about sometimes, but it's not it's not been incorporated into my overall taxonomy or my overall
is he accepting your
toolkit, metacognitive toolkit.
Is he accepting your MBTI framework?
I don't know. He's not really asking me about that. I'm not disagreeing with your point. I'm saying that I don't care what the theory or the foundational theory of the book or whatever says, because I have rendered it already useful in my toolkit as a specific tool that's logically consistent with everything else. Nobody else's theories or whatever that come out of the box, like as is out of the box, are of any use at all, because they're all wrong in one way or another, because they failed to account for some fundamental variable that I've accounted for already. And that it sounds, you're like, Eric, you can't make those kind of claims, but I can and do because they're accurate. Sorry. And I understand why you wouldn't want to believe that yet. I also concede this. I've not given you enough reason to believe that my theory is better. But the thing is, the paper, I put a link to it up there where you can link to that thing. It's an understanding of how cognitive functions are misunderstood because of a failure to understand what the most axiomatic level dichotomy is. Namely that each cognitive function is the conversion from the physical to the metaphysical, or vice versa, from the metaphysical to the physical. It's one direction, not the other. And so when we really understand types properly, we understand them as stacks of MMMP, MMPM, PPPM, like it's like that, and that'll tell you your duals, for example, that are proper. That's the best verification of the model that I feel exists there is